It was just another ordinary day at the town shooting range, until an old man picked up a gun. Young men were laughing as they fired, some missing the target completely, others barely clipping the edges. Then, a gray-haired man stepped up to the line. Calmly, without a rush, he aimed. The first shot cut the center, then the second, the third, the fourth, all through the same hole. The range went silent. No one knew who he was yet. But that day, they were about to find out. Welcome to The Last Stand, where we tell stories of forgotten courage, quiet lessons, and honor that never fades. Today, we follow a man whose aim was never just about hitting the target, but about discipline, patience, and mastery. Because sometimes, the real bullseye isn't on the paper, it's in the mind and the heart. The shooting range on the edge of town had been there for decades. Its wooden walls carried the scars of time. The floorboards creaked under boots, and the air was always tinged with the smell of gunpowder and oil. It wasn't a polished facility, but for hunters, hobbyists, and restless young men, it was the place to prove themselves. That Saturday, the range buzzed with noise. Shots cracked in uneven rhythm, targets were riddled with scattered holes, and laughter echoed between stalls. Friends teased one another over bad groupings, boasting about who would finally hit the bullseye next. The door creaked open. Conversations dipped for a second as an older man walked in. His hair was gray, his beard neatly trimmed, his posture still disciplined despite his years. He wore a simple jacket and plain trousers, nothing flashy, nothing to draw attention. And yet, something in the way he carried himself made a few heads turn. He signed in at the desk without a word, collected a paper target, and made his way to a lane. To most of the crowd, he was invisible, just another town elder spending his weekend. A few of the younger ones chuckled quietly. "What's Grandpa doing here? Gonna show us how it was in the old days?" The old man didn't respond. He pinned his target, stepped back, and set his gear down. His movements were unhurried, deliberate, the kind that came from decades of repetition. He put on his glasses, adjusted his ear protection, and lifted a modest pistol from the bench. The range was still full of chatter, but when he raised the pistol, a subtle hush fell over the nearest lanes. The man aligned the sights, exhaled slowly, and squeezed the trigger. Bang! The report echoed sharply. When the target was reeled back, a single hole marked dead center. "Beginner's luck," someone muttered, trying to laugh it off. But then came the second shot. Another hole, same spot. The third. The fourth. By the fifth, there wasn't a cluster of holes. There was one ragged tear through the middle of the bullseye. The laughter stopped. People leaned over their stalls, craning their necks to see. Even the range officer paused, eyebrows raised. "Wait, are you seeing this?" a young man whispered to his friend. "He's not even flinching. Every single shot center." A group of college kids who'd been showing off their new pistols fell silent, watching in disbelief. The old man lowered his weapon, calmly reloaded, and sent the target back down range. He didn't gloat, didn't smile. To him, it was as routine as breathing. He fired again. Same result. Perfectly centered, the grouping indistinguishable from one hole. The chatter that followed wasn't laughter anymore. It was awe. He placed the pistol back on the bench, removed his glasses, and exhaled. Around him, the range had transformed. The boys who'd been laughing now stood in silence, their bravado drained. Hunters in the back, who prided themselves on steady hands, shook their heads in disbelief. The old man didn't acknowledge the stares. He simply reset his lane, as if nothing unusual had happened. But for everyone else, the ordinary afternoon had turned into something unforgettable. The range was no longer filled with laughter. Instead, there was a low murmur, a buzz of curiosity and disbelief. Who was this man who shot with such calm precision? From the front row, a young man named Mason stepped forward. He was athletic, confident, and not the type to back away from a contest. His friends gave him small nudges of encouragement, their grins nervous rather than bold. Mason raised his voice just enough for the range to hear. "All right, old man, that was nice. But how about we make it real? 5 yards, 5 rounds, 5 seconds. You game?" A few of the younger shooters chuckled nervously. The range officer looked up from his clipboard, curious. The old man set his pistol down, adjusted his ear protection, and turned his head toward Mason. His eyes, sharp beneath his gray brows, gave no hint of irritation, only assessment. Then he spoke for the first time that afternoon. "I'm game. But first, remember something. Speed without control is just noise, and noise never wins." Mason grinned, perhaps more for his friends than himself. He set the timer on his smartphone, raised his pistol, and took his stance. Beep. Shots rang out fast, the rhythm frantic. When the target was reeled back, 3 hits scattered inside the outer rings, 2 off the paper entirely. Time, 6.42 seconds. Mason frowned, shaking his head. "Too slow. Let me try again." The old man lifted a hand. His voice was low, steady, and carried an authority that made the chatter fade. "You're rushing your eyes and crushing your trigger. Feet too narrow, shoulders too stiff. You're trying to wrestle the gun instead of guiding it. Breathe with the shot, not against it." Mason nodded reluctantly. He reset the target and tried again. This time the grouping tightened. 4 rounds in the torso, 1 just outside the scoring zone. Time, 5.73 seconds. An improvement, but not enough. The crowd leaned forward when the old man picked up a rental pistol, checking it with the ease of someone who had done so thousands of times before. He didn't posture, didn't make a show of it. Beep, bang, 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 bang. The string was crisp, evenly paced, almost like a metronome. The target reeled back, 5 holes stacked nearly on top of each other, dead center. The timer read 4.21 seconds. The murmurs exploded. Mason's friends exchanged wide-eyed glances. A hunter near the back muttered, "I've been shooting for 30 years, and I've never seen that." The old man held the target up briefly, then set it aside. "See? Press, don't jerk. The gun doesn't care about your pride. It only listens to your patience. Eyes first, trigger second. Follow through always. See? Press, follow. That's the rhythm." One of the younger shooters raised his hand almost like a student in a classroom. Can we try it?" The old man nodded. "Line up, but don't think about beating the timer. Think about making each round yours." One by one they tried. A college kid with shaky hands, a father who hunted deer every season, a young woman training for her security license. Each time the old man gave quiet corrections. "Widen your stance. Don't crush the grip, let it breathe. Reset your trigger, don't slap it." Each time, the results improved. Small steps, tighter groupings, steadier control. The shooters looked at their targets, then back at the man, realizing they were learning more in minutes than they had in months of practice. The range officer finally spoke, leaning against the booth divider. "I've run this place for 20 years. I've seen Marines, cops, hunters, and wannabes. But I've never seen anyone run a line like this." The old man gave the slightest shrug. "It's not the line, it's the mind behind it. You learn to see first, act second, and trust the rhythm. Speed's just the shadow of control." The room was quiet again, not from intimidation, but from respect. Fresh targets were clipped to the frames, the pulley system whirring as they slid back into place. But the chatter that usually filled the range was gone. No one joked, no one smirked. They were waiting, watching, as if the lanes had turned into a classroom. The old man picked up a marker the range officer had left behind and pulled a small whiteboard closer. With quick, deliberate strokes, he wrote 3 short words in block letters. "See, press, follow." He set the marker down and faced the crowd. "Everything you just saw comes from these 3 steps. Don't chase speed. Don't chase power. Chase clarity. Clarity of sight, clarity of trigger, clarity of mind." Mason stepped back to the line, determined to prove he could improve. He steadied his pistol, but the old man stopped him with a gesture. "You're rushing to the trigger. Let me show you." He adjusted Mason's grip, moving the young man's thumb slightly, easing the tension in his shoulders. "Lock your frame with your stance, not with brute force. Your wrist should flow, not clamp. Now see, press, follow." Mason fired his string. The timer beeped, the shots cracked, and when the target was reeled back, 4 rounds sat neatly in the center zone. one just off to the right. It was a leap from his earlier attempts. Mason's eyes widened, almost childlike. That felt different. The old man nodded once. Because you stopped fighting yourself. Remember that feeling. One by one, others stepped forward. A hunter in camo flinched with every shot. The old man placed a firm hand on his shoulder. You're trying to outrun recoil. You can't. Let it happen, then reset. See, press, follow. The hunter's next grouping was tighter, steadier. A college kid leaned in too close to the sights, straining his neck. The old man gently tapped the stock. Relax your eye. The gun won't shoot straighter just because you squint harder. The kid laughed nervously, then fired a surprisingly centered string. A young woman training for her security license clenched the grip so hard her knuckles went white. The old man guided her hand. Don't choke it. Let the gun breathe. Control doesn't come from crushing it, comes from balance. Her shots landed tighter than she expected, and she smiled behind her ear protection. The old man returned to the whiteboard, tapping each word with a marker. See, your eyes are the leaders. Don't let your finger outrun your sight. Press. Don't slap. Don't jerk. Press like you're closing a door quietly, not slamming it. The bullet leaves, but your job isn't done. Your eyes and sights should still be there, steady, as if the shot hasn't left at all. He paused, letting the words settle. If you miss, fine. Everyone misses. The question is, why? Did you see? Did you press? Did you follow? Answer those, and your next shot will be better. Heads nodded. Some scribbled notes on scraps of paper. A father crouched to repeat the 3 words into his son's ear. The range officer leaned against the wall, arms crossed, shaking his head slowly. I've run this place a long time. Never seen folks listen this close. Someone in the crowd finally asked, Sir, were you military? Law enforcement? Where did you learn all this? The old man simply picked up his gear bag and slung it over his shoulder. Doesn't matter where I learned it. What matters is you carry it forward. The gun doesn't care about your resume. It cares about discipline. And with that, he turned back toward the line of shooters, leaving the question unanswered. But the silence that followed wasn't about mystery anymore. It was respect. The smell of gunpowder still hung heavy in the air, but the range no longer felt like a weekend hangout. It felt like a classroom, a lesson carved into the sound of each shot. Mason reset his target, eager to try once more. But before he could, one of his friends stepped forward, lifting a scoped rifle from its case. Okay, pistol drills are one thing, he said, forcing a grin. But let's see if you can do it with this. The challenge wasn't cruel. It was curious, half daring, half in awe. The room stirred with whispers. Would the old man take it? The old man studied the rifle, checking the safety, the optics, the balance in his hands. He lowered himself into position, movements slow but exact, like a ritual. The lane went silent. Not a shuffle, not a cough, just the waiting hum of expectation. Bang! The shot cracked sharp. When the target reeled back, a single hole sat square in the center. He fired again. Same spot. A third, fourth, and fifth, all clustered so tightly they seemed like one. The room erupted not in cheers, but in stunned murmurs. Someone whispered, "Impossible." Another muttered, "I've never seen grouping like that." The old man placed the rifle back on the table, then finally spoke. Doesn't matter the weapon, doesn't matter the distance. Discipline carries across. The bullet only tells the truth of your habits. He stood, shouldering his worn bag. His voice carried steady, low, but clear enough for all to hear. Listen, anybody can pull a trigger. That doesn't make you a shooter. Real shooting isn't about beating the clock or flexing for your friends. It's about control. Control of your body, your breath, your mind. You learn that, and you'll carry it long after you leave this range. He let the silence breathe before continuing. And remember this, missing isn't failure. Failure is not knowing why you missed. Ask the question every time. Did I see? Did I press? Did I follow? Answer that, and you'll never stop improving. The words landed heavier than any bullet. Mason lowered his pistol, no longer itching to prove himself. The hunters nodded quietly. Even the range officer, hardened by years of watching amateurs and experts alike, stood a little straighter. The old man walked toward the door. Nobody asked his name again. Nobody needed to. He wasn't there to be identified. He was there to pass on something greater. As the door opened and the cool air swept in, he paused just long enough to look back at the row of shooters. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, spoke what his mouth did not. Carry yourselves with discipline. Then he stepped out into the fading daylight, the door closing softly behind him. The range remained quiet for a long moment. Finally, Mason whispered, almost to himself, "He never missed because he never forgot what mattered." And with that, the story of the man who never missed spread not through records or headlines, but through the lessons etched into every shooter who watched him that day.